I want to talk about the Brandon Ingram extension. Brandon Ingram has signed a 3-year, $120 million extension with the Toronto Raptors. I don't know what to make of this quite yet. I think that my immediate reaction to this isn't that Brandon Ingram is not worth $40 million. It's probably more than I would want to pay for Brandon Ingram, in all honesty. But I think that there are situations around the league where I can see $40 million for Brandon Ingram being worth it. Like if I was the Nuggets and I had Nikola Jokic already and I needed a secondary creator out there like in a significant way, I can see Brandon Ingram making a lot of sense for a team like that. If I was the Miami Heat or something like that, and I felt like in between Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo, I needed to find like a super creative playmaking wing, I can see a more of a case for that than I can see for Toronto. But with Toronto particularly, this is a team that I believe is now 17-35 after they beat the Philadelphia 76ers last night. They're 17-37. I'm sorry. They have the 24th ranked offense, 25th ranked defense. Defense has been a significant issue for the Toronto Raptors ever since Darko took over. Like that, this isn't a new thing for them over the course of these 2 years. They also, I believe now, and I can pull up their cap sheet while we're talking. I mean, I'll just say that I know that they have a lot of money now guaranteed to really like 5 guys in the starting lineup, none of whom are surefire all-stars. Let's go with like Scotty Barnes absolutely could make an all-star game next year, and that would not surprise me. Brandon Ingram could make an all-star game in the East, I think, and that wouldn't blow my mind next year. But like Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Jakob Poeltl, it would be a fairly large surprise if those guys made the all-star game. And now they are sitting here between those 5 players, Ingram at 38.1, Emmanuel Quickley at 32.5. That's 70.6. RJ Barrett at 27.7. That is 98.3. Jakob Poeltl is at 19.5. That is, what did I say? 98.3. So that's going to be, just doing quick math here, 117-ish, 117.8. And then Scotty Barnes at 38.7. We're up over like 156, 154, 155, somewhere in that ballpark for 5 guys, none of whom you can really guarantee as being all-star players next year. In the luxury tax line for next season, I believe is like 187. And then they're going to draft, let's say, somewhere between 6 and 10. That's another like 5 million-ish, let's say. So we're at like 160 with a tax line of 187. They're going to have to fill out, 8 players on the roster for 27 million. This just feels like a team that is getting wildly expensive. And they have Grady Dick and Ochai Agbaji, Jacoby Walter already on the books. So that's 15 million there for 3 guys. So now we're looking at 9 guys at, what would that be? 175? Yeah. 175 to 180. I mean, look, like they have some minimum guys already. They have Jamal Shed. They have John Mobo, like already on the books. They just signed Jamison Battle.
Hey,
and
Jamison
he has,
Battle.
I think, $950 guaranteed next year or so. Yep. It seems like they're not going to buy out Chris Boucher. And he's an unrestricted free agent. And if you want to retain him, I don't know, another $5 or $6 million over a 2-year deal, probably, given that he's been like a pretty okay backup center this year. I guess that what I'm saying here is that this is a team that's locking itself into this roster a little bit early, given I wouldn't even say this is a rebuild. It's not really a rebuild. It's just kind of a build. And they're locking in their cap sheet to a lot of long-term money with a lot of players that are, I don't know, like the 40th best player in the league to the 110th best player in the league or so. Maybe the 80th best player in the league. I don't know. And like Scotty has more upside than that. And I think that Brandon Ingram like could be a top 30 player in the league for a season. That wouldn't surprise me. It just feels like it's going to be difficult to maneuver around in order to reach that next level of contendership to me.
Yeah, like to me, this is ultimately going to come down to, I mean, I don't think they're trading Scotty Barnes. So you're keeping Scotty Barnes. You've acquired other talented players, right? Like I think RJ Barrett is a talented player. Quickly's a talented player. Ingram's a talented player. Pirtle probably, when you consider the contract, also maybe the best value just in terms of talent and contract.
Great value center.
Yep. Yes. My thing is like, if that doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. Maybe you play those 5 guys together and it works. I don't see how that works because none of those guys, I just think, oh, wow, really nice off the ball player. And now you've taken Grady Dick and put him on the bench. There's no room for your, they have the 5th best odds right now in the draft, actually, with where they're at. We'll see where they end up landing. No spot for that guy in the starting lineup or on-ball reps if it's an on-ball guy or whatever. So to me, it was just, we're going to acquire talent, which is okay. And then it's like, well, maybe now you just trade it, right? My worry is what kind of value are you going to get for the contracts that you have all of these players for? That's where I think it breaks down for me in terms of, okay, let's package RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly. That sounds interesting, other than the fact that they're on the books for $60 million next year. So what exactly is the return if you trade those guys or if you just trade one of them? So I don't know. And maybe Masai will find those trades and find those moves. And it'll be a Scotty plus BI plus Grady Dick plus this draft pick. Maybe Pirtle stays around and then you move these other guys and it fills in the gaps perfectly, right? Like let's acquire the talent and then we'll make trades to fill in the gaps. I understand the talent acquisition. I'm just not sure I agree with it when it doesn't fit in my mind in any sort of way. And then they're all on pretty substantial contracts, which means
they're all on large money at this point.
Money. And I don't know that you're getting great value if you do want to trade them, even if they are good players.
Outside of like the star deals that we saw, there were not many big contracts moved at the deadline. And we saw the Pelicans moved Brandon Ingram for a first round pick that I kind of like, actually. Like I thought that was a good first round pick to acquire, take a shot on the Pacers, being whatever they could be. But that pick might be like the 23rd overall pick next year at the end of the day. In fact, I would suggest that 2026 pick, its most likely outcome is probably somewhere between the 16th and 25th pick in the 2026 NBA draft, given the Pacers are pretty good. So, and it's top 4 protected. So there's not like top 4 upside, even though I think that the 2026 draft has a real shot to extend value down to like the 7 to 8 range in terms of like really, really high level prospects. So I look at that aspect of it, the fact that it was very difficult for teams to move high salaried players at this deadline. I look at the way that the aprons are impacting the NBA right now. Teams are worried to take on money that could be a little bit in the red, not even a lot in the red. Like Emmanuel Quickly is a good player. I really like Emmanuel Quickly. I do think he's a starting caliber guard in the NBA. Emmanuel Quickly at $32 million is very aggressive. Like that's not a deal that's going to be seen as an asset for anybody league wide. RJ Barrett's had like a really great season this year. He's averaging 22 points on 7 rebounds, 6 assists, shooting 47, 35, 66 from the line. You look at his, true shooting percentage this season, it's only 4% below league average. He's a physical defender, especially in the playoffs. GMAC is going to come on here when we draft, and I'm sure that he can speak to that as well. I don't know that contract is seen as a value league wide for a lot of teams. I don't think this Brandon Ingram deal at $40 million a year is going to be seen as an asset league wide. I think it's going to be seen, potentially as a net neutral. But given his injury past, I wouldn't be surprised if it was seen as a negative, in all honesty, for other teams.
I think it's getting a little too positive vibes because he didn't get the max. And so everybody was like, oh, he wants 50 a year. And because he didn't get that, now it's like, oh, well, this was a great deal by Toronto because they got him for 40 a year, where it's like, okay, I can have a palate for that, but I don't think it's a good contract. It's not going to make our top 10 list whenever we do it in the off season. It's not going to be in consideration for that. You know what I mean? Like I personally would have that as a negative deal. Yeah, I think league wide, it's a little bit more questionable, but I personally do not see that as a value deal. I think I think neutral is probably the best way to say it for me right now, especially when you consider the injury history and all that. I think what's interesting to me is, like, RJ Barrett was already on your books for 70% of the money. And so then why I would like to know if they see this as anything other than just straight talent acquisition. This is the only way we're getting somebody this talented to Toronto. It's not going to happen in free agency. We need to add talent and then we'll figure it out from there. Or do they actually think this is going to work together, Sam?
So I think it's twofold.
Okay.
I think that it is talent acquisition, but I think that they've recognized throughout the year and like the 40 games that Scotty Barnes has played that they just need more players around Scotty that can create their own shot.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with that. I think that honestly, they're right. They need more shot creators around Scotty Barnes. Now, the thing is that, like, do you know how many minutes Emmanuel Quickley and Scotty Barnes have played together?
Well, that's
season?
what I was going to have. They even gave this iteration a chance. How much have those three guys even played together?
So Quickley and Scotty have played only 320 minutes together this season. Those minutes haven't been like amazing. They're losing those minutes by 5 points per 100 as opposed to the 4 that they typically lose by. But I think that there is too much overlap in the way that all of these guys play together. Emmanuel Quickley. What is Emmanuel Quickley's favorite shot? He likes to get to that little jump stop floater.
Yeah.
Right? RJ Barrett. He likes to get downhill on his left hand, get into the middle lane, try and finish at the rim, maybe get to a little like jump stop floater, something like that. Scotty Barnes, like, he's at his best kind of attacking, getting into the mid range, playing at the elbows, areas like that on the court. Brandon Ingram, where's his best area on the court? He loves to get into the mid range and shoot pull ups. Like, that is his thing. I don't know if you can have a particularly efficient offense whenever, like in today's NBA, when everybody is trying to get to that area of the court.
Yeah.
That's my main concern here with Toronto. And oh, by the way, like, I saw Darko last night said that, yeah, I have no concerns that Scotty Barnes is going to be a 37% 3-point shooter at some point. I still strongly believe that. I think 36-37 is what he said. I mean, look, man, we're 915 3-point attempts into Scotty Barnes' career. Do you know what Scotty Barnes is shooting from 3 over the course of his career?
I do. I looked this up the other day when I watched a Raptors game because I didn't realize how low it was this season. He's at 30%.
Yeah, he's 30% over the course of his career on 900 shots from three. 918 it is now. He's shooting 26% from three this season. Last year, he shot 34% from three. So, it was better last season, which is a good sign. But, oh, by the way, do you know what he's shooting from 16 feet to the 3-point line this year? And he hasn't taken a ton of these shots. He's shooting 33% on those shots this year. Yeah. So, the deep mid-range has kind of eluded him this year as well. Last season, on shots 10 to 23 feet from the rim, he was at 30, I believe it was 37, 38%, which is not efficient enough to be able to live off of those shots. It's just really, really difficult, I think, when you're trying to make Scottie your primary player, to surround him with guys that like to live in the mid-range, when the reality of what you're hoping for from Scottie, in my opinion, is that he can be somebody that gets downhill, gets consistent paint touches, gets to the rim. I don't know. Again, I watched a bunch of Raptor stuff leading into talking about this. Matt Bonner went on Blake Murphy's show a couple days ago and talked about Scottie not getting to the basket enough and not being able to get to the basket. And Scottie saw it and made it a point against Philadelphia to try and get to the basket more often. I don't know if Brandon Ingram makes that easier for him necessarily.
So here's my thing. It's not all about corner threes, Sam, but part of an NBA offense, because it's the most efficient three and the way you have to space the floor, you have to have guys that can go play in the corners, right? Not everybody can play above the break. 7% of Brandon Ingram's 3-point attempts this year are from the corner. 13% last year, 7% the year before. Emmanuel Quickley, 14%. RJ Barrett's actually at 27 and he shoots it well. And the other thing is, you don't have a floor spacing big. I love Jakob Poeltl. I think he's really good. I think he's on a great value contract. It's not like you have Miles Turner that you can say, hey, at least our big is going to space the floor or can go play in the corner. And again, I'm not saying you just regulate players to the corner. What I'm saying is it looks like 5 players who all either want to play above the break or in the mid-range or in the middle of the lane. And you need at least one, maybe even 2 to go stand in the corner, be ready to be catch and shoot guys. And none of these guys, when you first think of them, that's not their thing. Grady Dick.
They're all on-ball players.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
This is why Jamison Battle is a player that I know from watching Raptors games, because it's oh yeah, he makes sense doing that for them. Stand in the corner, knock down threes, right? You just have to have some mix of that.
They gone about developing Grady Dick as well? They've started to make Grady Dick a more of a shot creator of off-ball movement.
When we talked about Grady Dick, it's been more of us being impressed with what he's done with the ball in his hands as opposed to just catch and shoot 3-point shooter, right?
Yeah. So honestly, the way that this lineup works, in my opinion, is that you make Grady Dick the off-ball player. You probably bring RJ Barrett off the bench or Quickly off the bench, one of those two, depending on who you want to play point guard. I think I would probably go Barrett personally, but Quickly has experience doing it, which is nice. Quickly is also making $32 million, which would be wild for a 6th man. I just don't really see how this is efficient salary cap management or how it's going to lead to particularly efficient offense. Maybe just having better players will help, and I think it will help, but does it help enough to completely lock yourself in? I guess.
Sam, not to mention defense. It's not like they got better defensively either.
That's also my thing. These guys are not great when they don't have the ball in their hands.
Yeah. So Scotty Barnes, good defender. but it's not the first thing we talk about with Brandon Ingram. You talk about it with RJ Barrett a little bit, right? But like, it's not like
I wouldn't say RJ is like a monster defender though.
No.
Like he's pretty good at one-on-one matchups, but I wouldn't say he like flies around off the ball and is like a havoc creator either.
Yeah. So it's just, I don't, it's interesting. And again, like, not that you should be making decisions based on like Jamal Shed, but it's also the best thing he does. Like, you just look up and down their roster and that's all it is. And then I'm just like, okay, who are they going to get in the draft? And then how does that player ever get to do this if you already have all of these other guys? And so
it's actually a really good point too. Like, imagine if they get, I mean, this would be amazing for them if they get the number 2 overall pick and you get Dylan Harper, right?
Yeah.
But like, okay, so you have Dylan Harper adding to the mix there. Okay, then now you have Brandon Ingram and Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett and Scotty Barnes. All of these guys want the ball in their hands. Like that's 5 dudes who play with the ball in their hands at a really high level. And you can say like, hey, it's a good thing to have a lot of guys who can play with the ball in their hands, but I don't think of many of these players as particularly good off-ball players. And by the way, Brandon Ingram, I would say, is the worst of them off the ball. Is actually my issue with it.
That's important. I meant to make that point earlier because we've given a lot of credit to guys like Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving's pretty good playing with the ball in his hands, right? But he does a really nice job playing off of used to be Luka Doncic. Darius Garland, pretty good playing with the ball in his hands. You know what he's really good at also? Playing off of Donovan Mitchell.
By the way, you say this is something like, okay, maybe guys can learn how to play off the ball. Darius Garland was playing off the ball from the time that he was like 14 years old playing for Brad Beal Elite, like up until the time he was 17. He didn't really get the ball until he was like 16, 17, playing in AAU. And then like he continued to like get way better and then played with the ball in his hands. But like having experience playing without the ball is the best way to get good at playing without the ball.
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys just like don't have a lot of experience even really doing that.
It's hard to drill off-ball movements and relocations and hammers to the corner and the timing and the art of cutting and getting comfortable playing on the baseline and all of those things. So that's probably the more important thing here is it's not necessarily an issue that they all can play with ball in hand. It's that it doesn't seem like any of them play great without the ball in hand.
Yeah. So look, to me, this is just leading to more moves for Toronto. I'll be interested to see what those moves are, I guess. I don't know that I have an answer for what those moves are at this stage. I think that once we get closer to the summer, we kind of see where the lay of the land is. I'll probably have a better inkling of that for them. But like, look, when Toronto fans say like it's hard to get good players to come up to Toronto and live in Canada, I understand that. Like I do. I think that to me, I just would have preferred a better fit that kind of worked across the board for everybody on their roster already, as opposed to a player that I think might be kind of fitting like a square peg into a round hole from, how he works on the roster.
Yep. I agree.
Let's get to a quick little note from Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money action. There are over 10 million members. Like I said a second ago, they invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prize Picks always puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. We are big fans of Prize Picks here. We absolutely love the app and what they're doing for the daily fantasy sports scene. Download the app today and use code Game Theory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use that code Game Theory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, Run your game.